Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today you're checking out the Magicka Templar PVP build. This is updated for the Wolfhunter DLC, and it's an awesome build. Super tanky, really survivable, does good damage, and has a lot of group utility as well. So if you're looking to pull big scores while also helping your team on the road to victory, then this might be the build for you. We'll go over everything from stats to some gear choices, some new gear choices, and skills and champion points as well. So stay tuned.
There's more blood to spill.
Alright guys, so we'll jump into the stats first, but quick disclaimer, this is my own take on the Magicka Templar. It's going to be a little bit different than a lot of builds that you might have seen, and I'll try to explain the differences, but this is just what works for me, and it's pretty fun, I think. I've really had a lot of fun playing this build lately. So Max Magicka is coming in at almost 34k health, 19k, that'll bump up to about 22, 23 in Cyrodiil. Max stamina is about 14.5k. Magicka recovery will go up a little bit with our potion, so we're looking at about 1800. Spell damage is a little bit low, 2200, but this does bump up with one of our sets, as well as our weapon damage glyph on the back bar. So we're talking over 3k easily on the build once everything is procced and going. 35% spell crits, looking good. On our back bar, with our defensive rune, we've got 36k spell resistance and about 23 physical, and then 2200 crit resist. So it is pretty tanky to begin with, and then once we go over the sets, you'll see how we're getting a lot of extra damage mitigation as well. So the survivability is really high on the build. Overall for the stats, we've got all the points into Magicka. Stage 4 Vampire, because I am using Mist Form, as well as the Vampire Ultimate, which is really handy on the build. We're using the Atronach Mundus Stone, purple, increase all primary stats food. And then we went with Argonian for the build, and I just think it works really well on the Magicka Templar. You saw that our recoveries weren't super high, and we can do that partially because of the potion passive that the Argonians get. So that's a big help. And then for the potions here, really easy. I just went with the Alliance War potions that you can get basically from any Alliance War or Battleground vendor, because we only really need the major sorcery buff here, so we don't need to spend a lot of money on potions, which is good. So moving on to the sets next, and we're going to look at some different options here and why I'm choosing to run this the way I do. The stats were a little bit low. I mean, the Max Magicka could go higher. You could bump it up to close to 40k with some different choices. But I made some interesting choices here that I like, and it works for me. So first up, we've got the Innate Axiom set. This is crafted from Clockwork City, and this adds a good bit of magic and stamina spell crit as well, which is nice. And then you can see the 5-piece bonus. This adds about 400 spell damage to all of our class abilities. And the reason why I really like this on Magicka Templar is because we are, on this build at least, not using any weapon abilities at all. Everything we're using is class-based, class skills. So that means our damaging abilities, class skills. Our healing abilities, class skills. So basically this will buff everything that we do. It's crafted really easy to get. So I think it was the perfect complement to the build. I am using 5 pieces of, heavy armor. So I'm using 3 Innate Axiom on the body. So heavy chest, heavy legs, heavy boots. So I'm getting the maximum armor there, and then I am using the 2 weapon slots as well for Innate Axiom. Next up, pretty typical monster set for the Magicka Templar is going to be Valken. This is great because a lot of pretty much all of our damage is damage over time, and you can see the 2-piece bonus here. Whenever you deal damage over time, you get that nice flame damage meteor to proc This basically procs on cooldown, so every 5 seconds you'll get this nice extra burst. It's really helpful for the Templar. I think it's probably the best monster set you can run right now on the Magicka Templar build. And then finally, the other kind of interesting twist to the build is I am using the Cyrodiil's Light set, the Light of Cyrodiil. This got actually buffed in the Wolfhunter DLC. I don't know if you caught it. It was rebuilt, basically. So the bonuses here are pretty nice. Spell damage, Magicka, and then the 5th piece got a little bit of a buff to it. So while you're casting or channeling, your damage taken is reduced by 15%. So this is that extra tankiness that I talked about when we were looking at the stats. So we have heavy armor, and then we have an additional 15% damage reduction when we're channeling. And if you know anything about Templars, most of your damage is done through channeled abilities. So you'll have this extra defensive buff up a lot, probably 80-90% of the time. This has no cooldown, so it's actually a lot better, I think, than some of the other damage reducing sets that are out there. The nice bonus too with Wolfhunter is when you get interrupted, so that could be bash, that could be stunned while you're channeling, your next Magicka ability is free. So this is a light armor set. You can get it from Cropsford, I think, in Cyrodiil. Give it a shot. It's a really cool set. I like the way they buff this for Wolfhunter, and it's been a nice addition to the build. So I'm running that with 3 jewelry, Cyrodiil's Light, and then I'm using the Light Waist and the Light Gloves here, and that just means we're getting the best usage of armor mitigation. As far as traits, went with mostly Impin, as much Impin as I could get. A couple of Sturdy would be good as well. Running full max Magicka glyphs. I'm trying to get as much Magicka on the build as I can. And then here's where it gets a little bit interesting. With our jewelry, I decided to run the Swift trait. So if you're familiar with the Magicka Templar and some of its weaknesses, it's a slow class. There's no major expedition, minor expedition, anything like that built into the Magplar. So you have a couple of choices. If you want to increase your speed, you can use speed potions, which are going to give up some Magicka recovery and spell damage. Or you can run Swift jewelry. So that's what I decided to do here. I'm running 2 pieces of Swift. And so basically I get almost 20% increased movement speed. Now I prefer this over using speed potions. Talked about the Magicka recovery and spell damage, but the nice thing about Swift is this also stacks with Mist Form. Okay, so this is going to synergize really well with using Mist Form on the build. I don't have enough transmute stones, but if I did, I probably would go with 3 Swift jewelry. Right now I'm just doing 2 Swift and 1 Arcane. That's why, again, the Magicka is a little bit low. So this is a personal choice. You can choose to just do the Arcane trait on all 3 if you want. You'll get much higher Magicka pool. But for me, I really like the Swift trait on this build. It makes it feel more like a stamina build where it's a lot faster. And since it is melee based, I think it works really well. I'm using all Magicka recovery for those glyphs. And then really quick on our weapons, we're using the innate Axiom Resto Staff and Fuse, so we get that nice 435 weapon damage. Procs on cooldown, that's nice. And then 2 innate Axiom Swords. A lot of people will question this and say, you should be running a staff. I guess you could. To me, though, I really hate weaving staffs with the Templar channeled abilities. It doesn't work very well, especially on console. It's hard to weave. And the other nice thing about using swords here is you can do a heavy attack and get stamina back, which you wouldn't be able to do with a staff. So again, kind of a personal choice. You can choose to run weapons, swords, or 2-hand, or you can choose to run staff. I don't think it's a big deal either way. This is just what I prefer. All right, that was a bit long. Let's check out the skills next, try to get through these. This is where, again, there's just lots of ways to play Magicka Templar. You can swap out a lot of these skills, so we'll talk about some different options. But for me, what I'm using is Vampire's Bane on the front bar. This is on our dual wield, and the reason why is lots of dot pressure, right? So it can proc Valken. And then also the snare. The snare is really nice since we are a melee-based Templar. It's going to help you close the distance a little bit better and do more damage. Total Dark. Now this is kind of a preference as well. The reason why I like Total Dark a lot on the build is it's a great counter for stamina builds. It's a great counter against Nightblades, Wardens, Templars, any kind of class that's trying to burst you down. What I'll basically do is just block and block cast Total Dark. What that does is it's going to damage them and heal me at the same time, right? So already instantly it's going to take off a lot of pressure that's coming against me. You know, the Stamina Nightblade jumps on me, surprise attack, all that stuff. I'm going to block, cast Total Dark, start dealing damage against them while healing myself back up. And that's going to give me a second to recover. So I do really like Total Dark on the build. You could slot something else here if you're playing in a really well-organized group. If you're hanging back a little bit more, you could do things like, let's see, you could run Radiant here if you wanted, if you had a good group. The problem with Radiant and why I don't typically run it with this build is we're heavy armor, so this costs a lot of Magicka. Even with the buff here, it's not always worth it, but you could definitely slot Radiant here if you want. Radiant's also going to benefit from that Cyrodiil's Light set. If you get bashed while doing a Radiant, you'll get all your Magicka back on the next attack. So Elusive Mist, I have this on the front bar, just a great mobility tool. It gives you 75% damage reduction. And the interesting thing about this that a lot of people don't realize is this is actually a channel as well. Okay, so the fact that this is a channel, this gets the extra 15% damage reduction from Cyrodiil's Light. Okay, kind of a neat trick there. So while you're in Mist form, if you're running this set, you're going to take even less damage. And then obviously this just helps you get rid of snares, roots, and helps you kind of change position. I think this is kind of equivalent to like Magicka Sorcerer Shield or a Nightblade Cloak. It's just a way to reset the fight. And since Templars don't really have a class ability to do that, I think this is still super necessary. You need this on a Magicka Templar. It's one of the few classes where you really need to be a vampire, I think, still in the game. So Sweeps is our main damage source, does decent damage, does a nice snare if you can land it, and it is a channel as well. So while we are doing our sweep in melee range against anybody, we have that 15% extra reduced damage from Cyrodiil's Light. So really nice. Then our last skill here, Inner Light. This is just some extra Magicka, trying to bump the Magicka up as much as I can because we are running that Swift. And then if you have your Mage Guild passives, you'll get an extra 2% Magicka as well. Then the ultimate here, you can choose some different things here. You could do Crescent Sweep. I really like Dawnbreaker of Smiting though, because we don't have a stun on the front bar. So what you can do is combine this with your first two abilities, your Vampire's Bane and your Total Dark. Get those going, do a couple of sweeps, and then follow that right up with your Dawnbreaker to get the stun. I don't think I mentioned it, but Total Dark does create a CC immunity for your target after the 6 seconds. But if you are good enough, you can land Total Dark first, get that going for a few seconds, and before the 6 seconds wears off, you can then hit them with the stun from Dawnbreaker. If you wait for Total Dark to go off after the 6 seconds, your target will be CC immune and you won't get the stun out of Dawnbreaker. So that's just kind of another trick. Total Dark into Dawnbreaker on the front bar. Does a nice bit of damage even though it is physical damage. And nice damage over time as well, helping us to proc Valken. Now on the back really quick, Purifying Light, this is just kind of a way to open a fight. It's a 6-second copy damage. So if you apply this first and then bar swap, go into all your damaging abilities, you'll get a nice burst of damage at the end after that 6 seconds wears off. Great skill, low cost, love it. Explosive Charge, this is our gap closer, and even though we are running Swift, we're still not super fast on the build, so being able to close the distance with something on this build I think is pretty important. That's why I ran Charge here. I did take the version of this that does not stun. This only stuns if the opponent is casting. And so the reason for that is I want to come in and still be able to use my Total Dark or my Dawnbreaker If you use the other morph of this, I think it's called Toppling Charge, it has a stun on it, and that will mean once you close the gap, you won't be able to do Total Dark, and your Dawnbreaker won't be able to stun anymore. So I think this morph makes more sense. Something else that I think I have in my clips is this will actually scale up height-wise, so you don't have to be on a completely flat surface. You can do a bit of a jump here, which is pretty cool if you get the right distance in there. Honor the Dead is just our heal. Gives a pretty strong heal, especially when it crits. And then you do get Magicka back over time. Extended Ritual, this is just, the classic Templar skill. Cleanse off 5 harmful effects. Really important in this kind of dot-based meta where you have a lot of slows, you have a lot of damage over time. So I think this is the way to go, definitely. Don't spam this though, it's pretty high cost. And then my favorite new ability, Magicka Templar Channeled Focus. This is another reason, along with being an Argonian, where we don't need a lot of Magicka recovery. You can see I only have like 1800. But with this running, this is equivalent to basically 480 Magicka recovery. And it now moves with you. So all you have to do is pop this every 20 seconds. You get that extra 480 Magicka recovery. And then you are extra tanky when you are standing in the rune. So great ability. Then our ultimate here, just a personal choice, Devouring Swarm. You get the nice heal over time and the AoE damage. So this is great when you're in trouble. Pop your Swarm and then go back offensive, go into your sweeps. And then last but not least, let's go ahead and check out those champion points. I did set this up for no CP. As you guys know, I play Battlegrounds mostly and nothing else, but I think this would work pretty well. So 48 into Warlord, 29 Sprinter, 56 Tenacity. You are going to do a lot of heavy attacks for sure on the build, so that will help. Arcanist is 64, 27 Mooncalf, 16 into Shadow Ward, 20 into Tumbling, 23 Blessed, 40 Elfborn, 29 Spell Erosion, 56 into Elemental Expert. We've got 31 into Master at Arms, 20 into Shattering Blows. Most of the points here into Thom, 61. And then in the red tree, 56 Ironclad, 38 Resistant, 49 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, 11 Thick Skin because you can purge dots, not a big deal. And then 25 Expert Defender and 32 into Quick Recovery. Alright everybody, that's going to wrap it up for the new Magicka Templar PVP build. Hope you enjoyed it. I know it's a little bit different than a lot of Templar builds, and hopefully you were able to look at some of the other options out there and then just tweak this for whatever works for you. So if you haven't already, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel. There's always new builds and guides coming out every week. So until then, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.